Hello, I'm Cheryl McCarthy of the City University of New York. Welcome to One to One. Each week, we address issues of timely and timeless concern with newsmakers and the journalists who report on them, with artists, writers, scientists, educators, social scientists, government leaders. We speak with each one to one. Few people have had as remarkable a life as Bettye LaVette, who since starting her R&B singing career as a teenager in Detroit in the 1960s has not only sung the blues, but lived them, has hit the high notes and gotten high, and has known or worked with some of the best-known names in the business. In her memoir, written with David Ritz, she holds nothing back about herself, the music business, or the people in it. A Woman Like Me has just been published by the Blue Rider Press imprint of the Penguin Group of Publishers. Welcome.
Thank you, Cheryl.
Why the title A Woman Like Me?
Well, it was the title of the album that I won a W.C. Handy Award for. It was the first thing to happen in these last 9 years of this coming up out of the crypt, I call it.
Mm-hmm. And you're a unique person, and you've had a pretty unique life.
Well, it has remained so. I mean, the things that have happened to me that were downs or bads have been unique, and what's happening to me now, I don't know. You know, most people my age, if you are able to see them now, and they're everywhere and singing for presidents and whatever, at one time they were a star and then they were rediscovered. But I'm not a has-been, never was.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
So it's very unique to have
You're an
someone.
always was. You're an always was. You didn't start out as Bettye LaVette, but as Betty Jo Haskins, the daughter of hard-drinking, hard-fighting parents who left Louisiana and wound up in Detroit. What was it like living in Detroit, growing up in Detroit in the late 50s and 60s when Motown was getting started?
Well, it wasn't, Motown wasn't getting started in the 50s. I was only 16. So when my first record came out, I had not seen people on stage, or I'd only been in school just months before that. So I grew up in show business, not necessarily in Detroit. I happened to be from Detroit, but I grew up in show business. I didn't, you know, my young life was spent in show business. And show business at that time was Detroit. I mean, that was everybody who wasn't a writer, was a producer, or was starting a fledgling record company.
And you talk about hanging out in the Black Bottom, which was what the black sort of entertainment section of town, going to the Greystone Ballroom. You said you never really were interested in being a child, that you were rather precocious.
I never was. My mother said I didn't take naps. She said baby talked to me, so to teach in an effort to teach me to talk, baby talk, because she said I spoke just like this all the time. So I don't know, I guess I just never found being a child interesting, but I found everything that adults did extremely interesting.
Like what? What did you want to do?
Whatever they did, I wanted, when they would curse, I would watch the way they would formulate their words, and my mother could do it really good without really ever saying any really bad words. You know, she certainly didn't curse the way the kids curse today. But the way they drank, the whole sex thing, and they made that so mysterious until it was running me crazy. I think if they had made it so mysterious, you know, I
think that's a problem.
I never saw my mother naked until she was ill, just before she died. You know, it was like, don't take your clothes off. Everything was so mysterious, I just had to know.
So how did you what piqued your interest in singing?
I always sung. I knew whole songs when I first started to talk. I learned to talk and sing at the same time, my mother said. So it was just another way of talking. I knew, as I said, whole songs when I was 2. And so I always sung. Being a singer is something I never thought I would be. I didn't know any singers. I had never seen any other little girls who sung. By the time we got a television, I saw maybe Brenda Lee, the only little girl that I saw singing. So becoming a singer was as amazing to me as, it's kind of like writing a book. I never thought I'd have a book, but I never thought that I would be a singer. You know, if I had been around music, people in music, maybe that would have been my aspiration. I always wanted to travel, but I never knew that I'd be able to do it as a
Right.
singer. I thought maybe I'd join the Air Force or something like that.
So you dropped out of high school in the ninth grade. You got pregnant and married at 15, and then you cut your first record at 16. How did that come about?
I was more trying to be a groupie than a singer, so I happened to be there with the singers and the producers. And a young producer heard me and thought that I could sing and took me to his producer, a woman by the name of Johnny Mae Matthews, who could very well have been the earliest, certainly black woman producer in the world, and certainly of rhythm and blues songs. And she liked my voice. And this all happened, Cheryl, in a matter of 10 days.
So they recorded your first record, My Man, He's a Lovin' Man, and this was for Atlantic Records. Your first
No,
record?
it was for her label.
Oh, okay.
And she was able to, her along with some other people who were involved with other artists from Detroit, the Falcons. Their manager, Robert West, was very involved with Atlantic. And Johnny Mae was very involved with him. So they were able to get the record to Atlantic.
Okay.
And Jerry Wexler heard it and bought it. It never came out on her label. It came out on Atlantic, but that's not whom I recorded.
Okay. And you were 16 at the time. So then you started touring during gigs. What was that like?
Oh gosh, it was just as if they took your high school son who played basketball and sent him on the road with the NBA. I mean, it was exactly like that. These were people that just weeks before I had been at the Greystone dancing to their music. And now I was right there with them. It was amazing, absolutely amazing.
Some of the places you went to on the tour.
Well, they weren't so much places that became renowned. It was more union halls and that kind of thing. Remember, this was 1962.
Right.
So we worked at, the 20 Gram was going well in Detroit. Of course, New York was what it is now, always New York. And then there was another club in Atlanta called the Royal Peacock, which is the first place that I ever worked with Otis Redding. And then another one in Miami called the Night Beat. And those were the nightclubs on the Chitlin circuit. You know, mostly south.
The black clubs.
When you got back to Ohio, there was one place in Cleveland. But it wasn't, there weren't gangs of nightclubs that blacks were performing at. You know, and the people who were on my tour, there was me and Otis Redding, who were just new there and glad to be anywhere. There was Benny King, who had had success on his own, but then a lot of success with the Drifters. So he may leave us for a day and maybe work at the Fontainebleau in Miami or some really big place. You know, but the rest of us were bound to just the places on the Chitlin circuit.
You write about the yourself and the other aspiring female singers in Detroit as being groupie singers, and your producers as being pimp producers.
Well, everybody wasn't a groupie singer. I was. I talk more about the road wives. There were so many women who were on the road who maybe had one record or that wasn't quite as big as mine, and they were well, for one thing, after you get used to traveling as a star and even a little star, you know, when that goes down, you've gotten kind of used to being in that thing, so then you travel with the star, you know, and that was, a lot of that was going on. But I guess I was...
But you seem to be saying that, you know, the women were able to advance themselves, that the men controlled everything.
Pretty much.
And the way the women got to do anything was to be basically girlfriends of the producers.
Pretty much.
And that's just the way it was done.
And the women who were doing anything were noted, like Florence Greenberg at Scepter Records, and like I can't think of her name, in New Jersey, and Johnny Mae Matthews in Detroit. Those were the women who were, you know, doing anything on the production side.
So you left your daughter in the care of your mother and sister, correct? Sounds like you weren't really into motherhood at that time.
Well, at 16, I was mostly into what 16-year-olds were into. I mean, in every other facet other than the fact that I had had a child, I was 16.
Right, right. So you made a second record, But despite your and the first one was made the charts. But for some reason, your career didn't take off at that point the way you wanted it to. And at one point, you decided to pick up that Detroit wasn't where it was happening, so you moved to New York. What was New York?
We're talking here again months. We are talking years. We're talking months.
Right.
New York was where I had always wanted to be, and then the tragedy that happened with my manager being shot in New York, I went there under the auspices of going to see about his care. And of course, his wife was there caring for him. But I wanted to be in New York. That was really where I wanted to be. Everything that I had read in Jet and Ebony about Harlem and about the Baby Grand and Small's Paradise and the Apollo Theater, and I wanted to be there, just be there.
Right.
I just wanted to be there under any auspices. I just wanted to be there.
Right.
And so I went, and it was just everything. Well, it was more, far more in every way than I thought it was. It was badder than I thought it was. It was better than I thought it was. It was bigger than I thought it was.
Okay, we're going to take a short break. Then we'll be back with more with singer Bettye LaVette, author of A Woman Like Me, after this message.
Did you know CUNY leads the way for students with disabilities?
CUNY Leads means linking employment, academics, and disability services. If you're a CUNY student with a visible or invisible disability, the City University of New York offers eligible students free career development and placement services. To find out if you qualify, visit cuny.edu/CUNYLeads. CUNY Leads, to the career I always wanted.
Welcome back to One to One. I'm Cheryl McCarthy at the City University of New York, and I'm talking with Bettye LaVette, singer extraordinaire and author of A Woman Like Me, published by the Blue Rider Press imprint of Penguin Books. So in New York, Small Paradise was a place where you sang a lot. You broke with Atlantic, not happy with the way they were managing you.
Right.
And
But the key there is that since I had only been in show business for about 9 months, how did I know that? How did I know what to do after
right.
that?
So that was probably a mistake.
That was my
Atlantic.
first business move, and it was the biggest mistake I've
ever made. And in a downward thing, you wound up working for a guy named Jay, who was not a pimp producer; he was just a pimp. How did you ever get lured into working for him?
Well, it was a very methodical thing for him. It wasn't so much that you had to be a whore because he was a pimp. You could have a day gig, you whatever, just as long as you turned your money over to him. So as long as I was singing and my career was going pretty good, I had a record then called Let Me Down Easy, and it was fine. So he had been in show business many years before, so he knew that it wasn't a ongoing thing. But my career was disseminated and coming apart, so it wasn't like, well, I was waiting for a gig. I was really waiting for a gig that wasn't coming.
Right.
So it was a thing where, like, when I lost my apartment, he let me move into his apartment. So then when the last gig happened, that was the last money I had, so then he started to give me money.
Okay.
And this went on for a while, so then it was like, well, how am I going to get my money back? And I wasn't thinking of it like that. I was in love with him, and of course more in love with him because he was helping me.
Right, right.
And so it was like that. It wasn't a thing where, like, hey, little girl, come here, I'm going to be your pimp and I'm going to beat you and whatever. He just was a very mean man when things did not go the way, well, I'm sure that he was mean under other times then, but I just never knew it until, I got into that position. Right. Yeah, and so it was well, you can't leave because you owe me,
right,
and you can't take your things. Finally, when I did wind up leaving, he wouldn't let me take anything. Nothing.
It was almost humorous because you were such a bad hooker that you had to depend on your friends to give you money to pay your pimp.
If you had seen my network, a call girl with my network of friends could have really survived. I mean, I called everyone. Sometimes I would call 4 people to get $25 from each one of them.
So you could
so
pay.
That would have the $100,
Okay. So you were able to break away from him, and you back in Detroit. Still trying to have your singing career. Along the way, you had relationships with a lot of men in the business that people know: Otis Redding, Ted White, who was Aretha Franklin's husband and manager, correct?
Not at the time.
Not at the time. Okay.
Girl, I don't know. I don't remember hearing anything about them being married. When I heard about them being married, they were married.
Okay. Okay.
When I knew him, when I met them, she lived one place, he lived another.
Okay.
I stayed at his apartment with him sometimes. She didn't. Someone else did. And as far as I knew, and as far as he said, he was a pimp.
Okay.
And then after a while, he was her business manager and husband.
Okay.
And I never saw that happen.
Okay.
I won't say it didn't.
Okay. But some of the other men you have relationships with Gene Chandler, Jackie Wilson, Bobby Bland. Who was your favorite singer, Bobby Bland?
Yes.
Okay. Why?
Oh, I don't know. I don't know what it is about his voice. They say that there's a tear in my voice. I think I hear one in Bobby's as well. Mm-hmm. And ever since I was really little, even though he was much a blues singer when I was first starting to sing, I was the only one in my group who would rush home to listen to Bobby Bland songs as opposed to what was the popular song of the day.
You almost had an assignation with Marvin Gaye, but it didn't quite happen, right? That had to be a big disappointment.
Everyone wanted to be anywhere alone with Marvin,
right.
Men or women. While Jackie Wilson was so sexy, there were men and women that wanted to be alone with him. Marvin was just so darn cute and so funny and so nice. There were men who went through as many things as I did just to play golf with him, or he was just a wonderful person, and you wanted to go to lunch with him or go to dinner with him. It wasn't necessarily a go to bed. You wanted to be alone with him. He made you feel so pretty.
And you said he was a very gentle guy as opposed to the macho image that people have of him.
Very, very, very soft-spoken, and was just the Marvin Gaye that I know now from books and whatever. I never met.
Your biggest love, however, was a guy named Clarence Powell. Clarence Paul, who was a married, much older Motown producer. What was it about Paul?
Well, he looked good enough to stop up with a biscuit, first of all. But he was 18 years older and was in the same business that I was in. I mean, every time he opened his mouth, I learned something, the things that I wanted to know. You know, and I would think that an attractive older man doing in the business that you love, I don't think he had any great problem. I mean, you immediately become attracted to your psychiatrist and to your mentor, and that was pretty much what he was. You know, he knew all about an 18-year-old girl. I didn't know anything about a 35-year-old man.
But the man who seemed to have made the biggest impact on your life and your professional career was Jim Lewis. You seem to have learned a lot of lessons. What were some of the things you learned from Jim Lewis?
How to sing, for one. When he met me, he said, you've got a cute booty, but if you want to learn how to, if you want to work, you're going to have to learn how to sing. He said, you may never become a star, but if you want to make your money singing, you will have to learn a lot of songs, and you will have to learn how to sing them. I said, well, I've got records. Those little records aren't going to last, you know, and they aren't that very good anyway, not to adults, just to you and your friends. And he said, they just aren't going to last you the rest of your life. So he made me learn songs, whether I wanted to learn them or not.
And from different genres, not just R&B.
Everything. But if he hadn't made me learn Sweet Georgia Brown, I wouldn't have gotten the lead role in Bubbling Brown Sugar. If he had made me learn St. James Infirmary, I wouldn't have worked every day that I wandered into New Orleans and got a gig working every night until I left. You know, just when they called for anything, he wanted me to be ready to go, and made me so.
By the mid-'70s, you had recorded 60 songs, but not a single album. You made a number of albums, but they sort of died in utero. Why didn't they happen? Why didn't they happen?
Oh, God, Cheryl,
was it just
many
bad
reasons.
luck, or what was it?
No, it really was just bad luck. I think that people want to ascribe it to drugs, or because the part of my life, a certain part of it is so adventurous, well, maybe she had run off with someone or whatever. Really, my first manager was shot by the husband of the biggest black rhythm and blues female singer at the time, Mary Wells. My next record producer was found dead several years later after he disappeared in a ditch somewhere. The next production company I was with cheated the main company out of a lot of money, so they got rid of them. Every one, The next deals I got with
You're the
Atlantic.
Black Widow of R&B.
It seemed like it. It seemed like it. Not only did I have this buzzard look, I carried it around. But sometimes I just walked into situations that were already bad. When I got into them, I just didn't know it. You know, the person maybe knew me for years, and I was like, oh, it's so good to see you. And they were like, yeah, I got a record company. Come on, let's record this. We do an album. And then they were gone.
Your first big steady gig seemed to have been working in Bubbling Brown Sugar, the Broadway musical. How long were you in that? You were started as an understudy, and then you were with
No, I started as a star.
Oh, okay.
I walked into the lead role.
Following who had done
Vivian
it
Reed.
before? I'm sorry.
Vivian Reed.
Okay,
Had been nominated for a Tony, and the show had actually won a Tony.
And you were with the touring company for how long?
6 years on different companies.
Okay.
You know, different
okay.
companies. I was with
but
the,
really a
the
steady
first one.
gig, good
Yeah.
steady gig for a long time. And it was not, but it was seemed to have been like in your 50s that things really started to finally take off. You know, you started recording in Britain. You hooked up with a record company called Auntie, and which was run by young people, and you wound up singing all kinds of music that was.
They just really, they believe I can sing anything. So since I believe that too, most record companies won't let you do that. They want you to sing what they feel you're noted for.
Right.
But my record company lets me sing anything. My record company president, Andrew Calkin, I call him my record guru. I mean, he kind of comes up, why don't you try this? Dive off of this landing, down onto that one. And I'm
So how many albums have you done at this point that got?
This is the that received any awards of any kind?
Well, that
I
have
just
been
got the
actually
2 Grammy
published.
nominations.
Okay, okay.
And this is the 4th
Okay.
album with him.
We've only got about 2 minutes left. Is there a message in Betty LaVette's life for young people who are coming along now who want to be singers?
Yeah, I think if you know how to do anything else, you should go and do that. And unless everybody's telling you that you're good, I don't think you should just wander on into the business just on a, yes, I can sing. You know, I always ask young people, they say, well, I'm a singer, and the first question I say is, can you sing? And if they're like, well, I think so, or if people aren't all telling you you can sing,
Don't do it.
stay in school or go on back to what you were doing before, get enough money so you can sing on your own, you know, and just go and just sing for free, and it won't cost you anything.
Right.
But it really, and then too, I tell them, if you're young, just think, if you really can't sing and you run into me in a small place with nothing but a baby grand piano, I will kill you.
You would hurt them. You would hurt them. Well, it's a very entertaining book, a great read.
Thank you.
And I'm very happy you were able to be my guest today.
Thank you. Thank you so much for having me.
We're out of time. I want to thank Betty LaVette for joining me today. A Woman Like Me has just been published by the Blue Rider Press imprint of Penguin Books. For the City University of New York and One to One, I'm Cheryl McCarthy. If there are any people you'd like to hear from or topics you'd like us to explore, please let us know. You can write to me at CUNY TV, 365 Fifth Avenue, New York, New York, 10016, or you can go to the website at cuny.tv and click on Contact Us. I look forward to hearing from you.